So I have 4 questions for you. Who are you when you no longer have hopes? Who are you when you no longer have dreams? Who are you when you no longer have a future? And who are you when you no longer have... SIGNALIS is one of those rare games that comes along and resonates deeply with many people for many different reasons. If you don't know anything about the game, it's a science fiction, surrealistic survival horror title. The developers have described it as a dream within a dream, and so because of that, there have been a lot of people that have tried to interpret the story and make sense of it, but at the end of the day, I think that the game is purposefully obtuse. But in spite of that, that doesn't mean that I think it's a waste of time to spend effort and energy trying to analyze the story and make sense of it. Like I said, it's had a huge impact on a lot of different people, myself included. One of the biggest things that stood out to me about this game on my first playthrough of it was just the sense of the dissolution of self, and the blurring of identities and the blurring of time and place and how all those things fit together. So to give you a very brief and all too simple summary of what this game is, you play as Elster 512, a replicant, which is basically a robot with a copy of a human's consciousness in it. Elster 512 is serving aboard the government's Penrose program with Arion Young, who is a Gestalt, aka a regular human being. The Penrose program is a bit like Star Trek in the sense that people are supposed to be going and finding other worlds and habitable planets, and they're supposed to be finding alien life. But unlike Star Trek, there is no coming back home. There is no returning to your home planet. Either you find a habitable planet, or you die in your spaceship as it breaks down and gives you cancer and destroys you and your replicant. So Elster and Arion are the only people on their Penrose ship, and they fall in love. And as the Penrose program recommends, Arion makes Elster promise to kill her if the time comes. Essentially, Arion has asked for a merciful death. But the thing is that the time does come when Elster needs to kill Arion. But Elster doesn't want to kill her own lover, so she sticks Arion into a cryopod. So this is basically the backstory to the game as I understand it, and it's one of those things to where everything about the game is kind of up in the air. All the events of the game are kind of up in the air as to whether or not they happened. So from my understanding, what happens is that this Penrose ship crash lands on a planet, and the entire game is essentially Arion still in the cryopod, using her bioresonance abilities to try to get Elster to remember her promise to her, that promise that Elster would kill Arion if the time came. So Arion has these bioresonance abilities, which as I understand it, is just the ability to manipulate thoughts and maybe even distort reality, which those two might be one and the same, from my perspective at least. So Arion, to try to get Elster to remember that promise, is having her go through a horror looping dream world. And that's the entire point of it, basically, is Arion just wants Elster to remember her promise to kill her. So Elster goes through a few different places, including the Sierpinski mining colony, which is where Arion would have gone if she hadn't joined the Penrose program, Nowhere, which is a big Silent Hill 1 reference essentially, and Rotfront, which is where Arion lived some of her life growing up. In between these areas, you're sent to other areas as well, including a speeding train with Arion on it, the radio outpost where Arion grew up, and the school library where Arion was bullied. So time and place are constantly being screwed with, and identity is too. You spend a good, probably third, maybe half of the game looking for the character of Alina So, only for it to be revealed that you should be looking for Arion. And I want to make this clear, none of this information that I'm sharing with you is given to you directly. It's all stuff that you have to piece together just through the kind of cryptic cutscenes, through scattered notes, and through just kind of filling in the blanks. None of this is really all that clear at all. And then, of course, continuing on the idea that identity is being blurred, there's this idea that Elster 512, the replicant you play as, has a consciousness which is cloned from another decommissioned Elster unit, which in turn was cloned from the consciousness of a real Gestalt, a real human being. So essentially you are a copy of an original. Then there's the character Folke, who's in charge of the mining facility, whose identity seems to be blurring with Elster's, and who seems to be taking on some of Elster's memories. And this character, in turn, is based off of someone else as well. There's the character of Adler, whose entire identity seems to be reliant upon Folke, and so whenever Folke starts kind of having this breakdown or freaking out, or whenever she gets sick, then Adler himself starts losing it a bit. It seems like every replicant kind of struggles with this, and so they all have specific objects that they're supposed to be given so as to keep their memories intact and keep their identities in line, essentially. If these characters are not given their quote-unquote fetish objects, then they are not going to be able to maintain that sense of self. And Ariane isn't even the only character in this game with bioresonance abilities, and so some of these replicants have bioresonance abilities, meaning that they can spread their emotions to other replicants. And so there's this constant blurring and meshing of identities and people losing their sense of self within one another. And then on top of that, there's this blurring of dream and reality too, where it's super unclear as to where the dream ends and where reality actually begins, or vice versa. It's super unclear as to what in this game is actually true and what is actually happening and just what is fantasy. In addition, there may be some kind of Lovecraftian artifact that is manipulating people as well, or maybe there's not. Again, it's unclear. I've played through the game multiple times and I've researched this, and I don't even know if I'm correct in everything that I'm telling you, just because everything that I've described has multiple different interpretations, and many of them seem to be pretty valid, honestly. Essentially, the idea I wanted to discuss with this video is that I think that when you don't know who you are, the world becomes confusing. And when you don't understand the world you're a part of, then your own identity becomes fuzzy. So Signalis is an angry game. Most people would probably describe it as sad or melancholic or depressing, and I think all of those terms fit. But whenever I hear the track Cigarette Wife, which is essentially Elster's theme by the end of the game, I think that there's a real bitterness and a rage that comes through. And I think it's difficult to tell at whom exactly the rage may be directed. I think that within the context of the game, some of the rage could be directed at characters like Adler or Folke, people who are in charge of the mining facility and seem to have some control of the situation they're in. I think that Elster probably directs some rage at herself just because of her difficulty and potential inability to even keep or fulfill her promise to Arion. Maybe if there is a Lovecraftian cosmic entity causing this game to happen, maybe some of the rage is directed at that. But really, I think there's a large amount of mostly unspoken anger that is directed towards the government and towards the society that put Arion and Elster in this situation that they're in. Near the end of the game, when Elster sees the flag of the nation, she remarks that it is meaningless. And even though the events of the game are super unclear, I think that we can piece together a backstory that makes sense of why she would say that. So let's talk about Arion for a bit. Essentially, Arion grew up away from everyone in a radio outpost with her mom, away from society. And up there, she fell in love with books and learning and art. Then she was sent to live in the city with her aunt, where she was then bullied and rejected in normal school. She just didn't fit in with the other kids, and so was rejected because of it. After that, she had to mandatorily serve in the military, where they tried to unsuccessfully destroy her love of painting. And after that, she had to choose between either working in the mines of Sierpinski or joining the Penrose program, which is what she ended up doing. Looking at Arion's history, it makes sense as to why she signed up for the Penrose program, even though it almost certainly would have resulted in her death no matter what. Again, the only other real option was that she would go to the mining colony on Sierpinski, which we visit as the first major area of the game. And seeing as how this game may just be a dream from Arion's head put into the mind of Elster, I don't think that this depiction of Sierpinski is probably 100% accurate, but I think that there's more than a grain of truth to it. We see that at Sierpinski, people are deprived of even the most basic rights and are limited to have only a certain number of possessions. They all sleep together, they all work together. It's just a miserable experience. People there are beaten by replicants, sometimes beaten to death. They're often sent to the re-education floor. They're interrogated, they're not allowed to speak certain words or have certain things. And really, it just seems to me more like a prison than anything else. And Rotfront, the place where she grew up, wasn't particularly great either, as it seems like there were strict censorship laws in place, similar to Sierpinski. So it's all very 1984. So it seems to me that having been bullied much of her life and belonging to a country that doesn't value or care about her, Arion just chose to shoot off into outer space as part of the Penrose program and to just try to live her life the best she could that way. And who knows, maybe she did actually want to find a habitable planet. But if I had to bet money on it, I would say that she was probably just trying to get away from the rest of society. As I look at Arion's backstory, it strikes me that there's this kind of slow crushing of hope, and essentially it's the complete death of hope through the destruction of her dreams. There's a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche in his autobiography Ecce Homo that states that man would rather will even nothingness than not will. I think that as human beings, a lot of what defines us is our hopes and our dreams, and it's what we're working towards. And in creative writing and storytelling, one thing that I've heard repeatedly over and over again, and I've found to be true, is that the most important thing to know about a character is what they want. Because really, that's all a story is it's a conflict between two people who have differing interests. An obvious example of this is the Avengers want everyone to live, but Thanos wants to kill half the population. The two parties have opposing goals, and so because of that they fight, and that is why there's a story there. Or maybe vampires want to suck your blood, but you don't want them to suck your blood because that would be bad. Happy Halloween. But I think that having some kind of hope or dream or aspiration is such an important part of being a person, because without it, without some hope for better days or some future achievement, without a desire or a wish You don't really have anything to work towards, so inevitably your days will feel meaningless to you. I think that it's almost guaranteed that in those situations, of course you're going to feel like nothing matters. And I think that this is something that we all too often take for granted, that want that we have, or that desire. Even if your only ambition is to play a new game or to be left alone, that's still something. And again, as in creative storytelling, I think that what we want comes to define us as people. It determines what we focus on and what we chase after and what we spend our time doing. So the question is, what happens when you take that away from someone? What happens when someone has nothing, when they have no reason to hope for the future or to feel excitement about things to come? What happens when you take everything away from someone? I think we see that in Signalis. Ariane serves her mandatory military service, and to escape the minds of Sierpinski, she joins the Penrose program and is shot into space where there's nothing else. But she falls in love with the player character, and she has this love, she has this relationship in her life, and she has an opportunity to just paint and to watch movies and to hang out and to be happy. She has the opportunity to express herself and to fully be herself and to be who she wants to be. And it seems like for the first time in her life, she is doing what she actually wants to be doing, and she's happy. But then the ship breaks down and she gets sick and she has no hope for future days. And so this is when Elster is supposed to kill her, because there's nothing left for Ariane. She has nothing else, and so all Ariane wants is the ending. She wants it to end for her. And Ariane knew that there was the possibility, maybe even probability, that things would end up this way, but still she endured. And I'm assuming that it's because she still had the hope and there was still the possibility of there being better days or something more for the future. So I think that when you lose your concept of the self, then that is when everything about your life truly falls apart. Or maybe it's the opposite, that when everything about your life falls apart, that's when you lose your sense of self. I'm kind of shocked that I haven't seen more people discuss American Psycho within the context of this game and draw parallels to it, because it really does feel like both works are playing with a lot of the same exact themes. Both works focus a lot on themes of identity and crises of identity. So I know a lot of people who haven't seen American Psycho or read the book, and they think that all the movie is it's just about a stock trader in New York who murders people. But one thing I find very appealing about American Psycho is its meditations on identity and its focus on showing how people connect their identities to things, or if not things, then to other people. Throughout the work, Patrick Bateman is mistaken for other people. Sometimes he's mistaken for Marcus Halberstram. At one point, he records a voicemail pretending to be Paul Allen, and people believe it. Even when he tries to reveal his true colors and blatantly tell people who he is and what he believes and what he does, he's rejected. When he tries to tell his lawyer that he's a murderer, the lawyer doesn't believe him. Whenever he is in the club and he says that he likes to dissect girls, that doesn't really cause any stares. I think that a lot of the same things happen to Ariane in Signalis, most obviously in the first half of the game or so, when Elster is searching for Alina So. Because it's revealed later that Alina So is not even someone that Ariane knew. Alina So is a girl that Ariane saw in a picture that caused Ariane to want to join the Penrose program. So if the entire game is a dream that Ariane is projecting into Elster's mind, then Ariane can't even remember herself, and she's just clinging to photographs that she saw as pieces of her own identity. She's lost herself so badly that she doesn't even include herself in the story all that much for the first part of the game. And again, I think hope is what defines a person in a lot of ways, and Ariane's pretty consistently denied herself and who she wants to be. When she attempts to be herself, she is bullied or she's punished in some way. People write letters suggesting that she is strange, so she is constantly beaten down for her attempts to be who she really is. And I think the most obvious denial of her will and the most obvious denial of who she is and who she wants to be comes from her own lover. It comes from Elster, whenever Elster does not follow through on Ariane's wish to kill her. It's understandable why Elster wouldn't want to kill her own lover. But going back to the Nietzsche quote, I think that in a lot of ways, since Ariane cannot will a good life into existence, this is her attempt to will nothingness. And even that fails and doesn't work out in most of the endings for the game. And so as cheesy or as cliche as this may sound, I think that it is the destruction of dreams and the following loss of self that is the real horror of Signalis, because it feels real to me. I think that this is something that I have seen reflected in the world today and in many of the challenges that people, especially young people, face in this world. There's a quote from The Theater and Its Double that reads as follows: "Masterpieces of the past are good for the past. They are not good for us. We have the right to say what has been said, and even what has not been said, in a way that belongs to us. a way that is immediate and direct, corresponding to present modes of feeling and understandable to everyone. I think this quote is worth thinking about in the context of Signalis because it causes me to wonder, what kind of world do we have to live in to produce such a confusing, strange, weird game like Signalis, which resonates with so many people? Art is a reflection of its creator, yet nothing exists in a vacuum. And so I think art is also a reflection of the society in which it was created as well. Part of me thinks that a lot of the frustration that this generation has is not actually greater than previous generations, but just more visible because of the internet and because of social media and the like. But then I think that if it is more visible, if the frustration and anger is more apparent, then it spreads more quickly and therefore grows and increases and ends up being more than previous generations. So even if the frustration of this upcoming generation wasn't initially greater than that of previous generations, I think that it probably has become greater. And part of me wants to say that older generations did have it harder than this current generation. For instance, the world wars were bloody, horrible wars and difficult on any and everyone involved. But in a way, that actually makes our current situation worse. The reason why is because of the fact that in the United States, we aren't really fighting any kind of major war. But the thing is that if we are in peacetime, then we should be a prosperous nation. People should be able to receive an education without albatross-like debt. People should be able to afford homes. People shouldn't have to worry about going bankrupt from a sickness. People should be able to find good jobs after graduating from college, and people shouldn't have to work for the exact same minimum wage that they've been working for the last 15 years. Because of the fact that we don't need to focus on a war or establishing a nation or anything like that, things should be good. We should be in a period of building up. People shouldn't feel like they're in survival mode. People should be encouraged to make their lives great, to build up their communities, and to establish a future that the next generations will be happy to inherit. There's no excuse for the position we're in, and it's maddening and infuriating. And so no wonder we try to numb it in some way whenever we're faced with our own situation, whether we try numbing it through substances, through people, through the internet, through games like this one. How often have you tried to lose yourself when faced with your own problems? The idea of the Penrose program as presented by Signalis is barbaric, and it's sick, and it's completely wrong. The idea of someone jettisoning you and your potential and everything you ever could be out into space only to die a miserable, painful, cancerous death is a horror greater than anything else found in this game, because it sounds like something that would 100% happen if space travel were a viable option in this day and age. I mean, there were even people a decade ago that signed up to go to Mars and were part of the Mars 1 expedition. It went bankrupt before anything happened, but there were people who were willing to just leave the Earth and die in space. And as I mentioned, there's a lot to this game that is left to interpretation. As usual though, I think that the greatest horrors are not the inexplicable ones that come from outer space, but the completely understandable man-made horrors that are well within our comprehension. Things aren't the way they used to be. That's been true of every generation that's lived under the sun. But now there are certain things that are objectively and undeniably worse than they previously were. And really, I think that there's this kind of dejected nihilism that is found in my generation that isn't quite present in preceding generations, at least not so strongly. Wealth inequality is at an all-time high, and that doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. It feels like our entertainment and living needs are covered by the same 3 or 4 corporations, including the corporation that owns the platform that you're watching this video on. People seem to have less confidence and faith in relationships, and I think this is a big one. People aren't having as many kids as they once did for a variety of reasons, but I think that one of those reasons is just that living conditions are not really supportive of raising a family right now. It's not easy to do. Not that it ever was. And I think there are very legitimate reasons to not want or desire children, but I think that in a lot of ways, having kids kind of shows a hope and trust in the future and a belief that things will be good, even though they will never be perfect. And so I think that this is a symptom of a much larger problem. I know that not everyone watching this video is American, and Signalis is not even an American game. So I want to acknowledge that I'm very much speaking from the perspective of an American, but still I think that a lot of these problems probably apply to other places in the world as well. So going back to the questions at the beginning, who are you when you no longer have hopes? Who are you when you no longer have dreams? Who are you when you no longer have a future? I think these are questions that we shouldn't ever have to deal with, primarily because I think we should always have some kind of hope or dream or some kind of aspiration. But this is a question that this generation and the coming generations will have to wrestle with, because honestly, it feels like a lot of the dreams and hopes that people once had are out of reach. Whether or not people realize it, I think that this is a major reason why Signalis has resonated with so many of the people who have played it. It's a confusing game, and even after having spent many hours playing the game and researching it, there are a lot of things that still don't make sense and that I don't think we'll ever get 100% clear answers for. But I can't help but feel that in some way, the rage that I see in the game at the circumstances the characters find themselves in some way connected with other players. At its core, Signalis resonates with people at an emotional level. I can't say if anyone else feels this way, but for me, a lot of the reason why Signalis has come to mean so much to me is not in spite of the confusing and the blurred identities and the blending of reality and dream, but because of it. It's because of the confusion that I love the game. There is a comfort to be found in seeing a situation that is reflective of your own, if even in the worst kind of ways. With the death of your hopes and dreams, it's hard to know who you are, and if you can't say who or what you are you really anything at all? In spite of everything, I'm still hopeful for the future. Even though things are bleak and have always been bleak in some way, shape, or form, I think that I still have some hope. And I think that there will always be opportunities for happiness or joy or peace in some way. The story of Elster and Arion, no matter which ending you get, doesn't end happily. It's always sad or depressing to me. And I think that's one thing that makes this work of art great. But I don't think it has to be that way for us. I don't think that our endings have to be sad and depressing. I don't think that things have to end badly for you or for me, and so much of what we see seems to suggest otherwise. But again, I can't press forward without hope. There's a fourth question that I didn't ask, and it's this: who are you when you no longer have fears? One thing I try to remember often is that you really have nothing to lose. We all die at the end, no matter what. And so when I say that you have nothing to lose, I mean that there really is nothing to lose, because it all goes away anyway. Memento mori. Remember that you too will die. So in the end, I think that the only thing that you can really try to do is just what you love. And I don't mean that in some kind of new agey, follow your bliss kind of way. I mean it in a more what's the worst that can happen if I follow what I love kind of way. What's the worst that can happen if I try to do what I want to do in spite of the circumstances or in spite of the struggles that might come along with it? You try, you lose, whatever, you'll end up in the ground anyway. There's a song by The Cure called Faith, and it ends with these lines: I went away alone with nothing left but faith. I long for a society where a story like Signalis doesn't resonate with so many people, because if we ever hit that point, then I think that means that things will have gotten better. But really, I think all you can do is press on and just live your life as best you can, even in the times when you aren't really sure who you are or what you're trying to do. And really, I think all you can do is press on and just live your life the best way that you can, even at the times when you aren't really sure who you are or what you're trying to do or accomplish. Some days it feels like clinging to that hope for hope, and that hope for better days and better dreams, and that hope for a solid sense of self and a solid understanding of the world. Some days it feels like that hope is all that there really is. So thank you for watching. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments box down below. So thank you and have a nice night.